All right, so I wanted to start it with an article that was sent to me that I was confused because of the title. The title was Cancer Treatment Hype Gives False Hope. If you only hear or read that, what do you think? I actually thought it was talking about natural or integrated medicine or some kind of alternative to standardized medicine. But that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about standardized medicine and actually the top echelon of everything that relates to standardized cancer treatment. So, subtitle is Families Hear Good News That Doctors Have Disease in Retreat. Then reality strikes back hard. Michael Uvaney of Rome, New York says his older brother James may have gotten more time from the many drugs he tried during his illness, but his quality of life was not good. Now, this is an interactive, like all our lectures and classes, so if you get any questions or comments all the way through, go ahead and jump in. So after James Uvaney was diagnosed with a deadly form of skin cancer, which was melanoma, it seemed as if everyone told the family what they wanted to hear. Have hope. You can beat this. We're here to help. The brothers met with doctors at a half a dozen of the country's best hospitals, all of which have impressive credentials that inspired confidence. Michael was in awe when he visited the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, one of the world's most respected cancer hospitals. It was like seeing the Grand Canyon, said Uvaney, which was age 66. You never get used to the size and scope. Even MD Anderson logo on buses and buildings, which shows cancer crossed out in red above the words making cancer history, made the family's battle seem winnable. Are you getting the gist of this? I'll just sum it up as propaganda that they're finding out that is not that way. So you'll see the quotations as I'm reading this. There's also, for the ones online, there's this that you can download and read that. So what he was thinking is that they were going to save him. Patients were bombarded with news that the country is winning the war against cancer. How many times have you heard that? How many years, how many decades have you heard that? Is it won yet? No. The news media hype research results to attract readers. Drug companies promise a chance to live longer to boost sales. Hospitals woo paying customers with ads that appeal to patients' fears and hopes. I'm starting to hear more and more that we are better than we think we really are, says Otis Brawley, Chief Medical Officer at American Cancer Society. The consequences are real and they can be deadly. Patients and their families have bought into treatments that either don't work, cost a fortune, or cause life-threatening side effects. Life-threatening side effects. Turn that a little bit. Let me ask you a question. Has anybody ever watched TV? You've never seen a drug commercial, right?
Oh, yeah.
About anything. And then they have smiley faces and nice, fun activity, while kind of in the background they tell you side effects, a few side effects. And some of these are like, you know, for asthma, and I'm not talking about critical asthma, for asthma, or is smoking, typically the habit of smoking, a critical thing? It can lead to critical things, but it's not critical. But if you want to quit and you want to take a drug to quit, that can cause critical things. Seizures, cause of death by the prescription, on and on and on. So that's part of what they're talking about. We have a lot of patients who spend their families into bankruptcy getting a hyped therapy that many know is worthless. That's what Brawley said. Nobel laureate James Watson predicted a cancer cure was imminent. I've been hearing that my whole life. Andrew von Escabach had a goal of beating cancer by 2015. Progress is not the same as a cure for cancer. which only the medical community can use that word. I think that's quite interesting. Although scientists have made important strides in recent years, and many early-stage cancers can be cured, this is their quote, not mine, most of those with advanced cancer die. For Uvaney, hope gave way to crushing disappointment when his brother's health declined and he died from metastatic, which is metastasized melanoma in 2014. You get your hopes up and then your heart drops off the edge of the cliff. Expectations dashed was the next line. Caregivers like Michael can suffer grief and guilt if loved ones are riddled with side effects and don't survive as long as the family expected, says Holly Prigerson, co-director of the Center of Research of End-of-Life Care at Weill Cornell Medical University or College. For decades, researchers rolled out cancer therapies with great fanfare, says Veni Prasad, an assistant professor of medicine at Oregon Health and Science University. When such efforts fall short, the cancer world simply moves on to the next big idea. I don't know why that makes me think of technology. Remember how technology used to be? You come up with something and then you make it better and better and better until you hopefully perfect it and it works very well. What do they do now with technology? You come out with something, whether it's a computer or phone or whatever it is, and instead of seeing how good you can get it to function, you're just coming out with the next best thing, the next thing, the next thing. See how fast you can go with coming out with the next thing, and nothing really gets perfected, nothing really works well. Hyping early scientific results can attract investors that allow researchers to continue their work. Positive results can lead biotech firms to be bought out by larger drug companies. Both of those lead to money. It's in the interest of almost every stakeholder in the health system to be optimistic about these therapies, said Walid Galad, co-director of the Center of Pharmaceutical Policy and Prescribing at the University of Pittsburgh. So none of these quotes, none of these people are the little guys. Of course there is money to be made. The U.S. spent nearly $88 billion treating cancer in 2014, and patients paid nearly $4 billion out of pocket, according to the American Cancer Society Action Network. Because I run into a lot of people that often choose the medical way, and their motivation is that insurance will pay for it. And aside from your copay, there's so many treatments that you'll go through that insurance won't cover or only covers a portion of it. So there's a lot of out-of-pocket. Spending on cancer, a disease that mostly afflicts the aging, is likely to soar as people live longer. Others argue that the excitement about cancer research is justified. A spokeswoman for Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, an industry group, said cancer patients have good reason for optimism. That's her opinion. We continue to see great strides in identifying the genetic mutations and related factors that can drive the seemingly random formation of abnormal cells and cancer, was a quote from spokeswoman Holly Campbell. Promises to cure abound all over the place. Even the country's top scientists sometimes get carried away. In '98, Nobel laureate James Watson, who co-discovered the structure of DNA, told the New York Times scientists would cure cancer in 2 years using drugs that block tumor blood supplies. At that time, the drug had only succeeded in mice. That's quite a jump. In 2003, the director of the National Cancer Institute, Andrew von Escabach, announced a goal eliminating suffering and death due to cancer by 2015 by better understanding tumor genetics. In a recent interview, he acknowledged he didn't communicate his goal well. We're offering what we have, but making it appear that it's more than it is. That's what he said, which is a fellow at the Milken Institute, a health and public policy think tank. It's easy to see how patients' hopes are raised, said Timothy Turnham, former executive director at Melanoma Research Foundation, which is an advocacy group. There is a disconnect between what researchers think is statistically significant and what is really significant for patients. Patients hear progress and they think that that means there's going to be a cure. Uvaney said his brother's experience was nothing like the sunny images on TV commercials in which cancer patients hug their grandchildren, hike the mountains, and lead dance classes. They make it look wonderful. Check out some of those too. And if you'll read the fine print, not only that some of those are actors, but some of them are saying stuff like they're 11 months into this, that, and the other. They're not telling you the end story. A TV commercial from Bristol Myers Squibb, the drug Opdivo, projects the words, "a chance to live longer." A chance to live longer, on the side of skyscrapers as a captivated crowd looks on. In much smaller type, a footnote reveals that lung cancer patients taking Opdivo live just 3.2 months longer than others. But they don't tell you the quality of that 3.2 months. A TV ad for Merck's Keytruda features reassuring images of a smiling and healthy patient hugging her family, not fighting for breath or struggling to walk. Although the commercial notes that the people in the ad are actors, the commercial claims the drug provides a chance for a longer life. With "it's true," the little TRU for the drug. Your heart sinks when you see those ads, said Uvaney. Seeing the family depicted in the ad makes you wonder if they're going through the same path that we did. The Keytruda ad notes that 71% of patients given the drug were alive at the time of patient follow-up, compared with 58% of those who received chemotherapy. The ad doesn't mention that the time of follow-up was only 11 months. That's a coincidence separate from the one I was talking about that I saw on a TV ad. Overstating success. It's not false, it's just incomplete, says pharmacist Harold DeMonico, a visiting scientist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston. They don't give patients or the family enough information to make a reasonable decision. Amen. In an interview, Merck Senior Vice President Jill DeSimone said that the company aims to be responsible with advertising, noting that the Keytruda ad reminds patients to talk to their doctors. They all do that. Contact your doctor. We may have some pharmaceutical reps online. I don't know if we have any here. There's one I treated not long ago. Well, not long ago, it was about 3 years. And a pharmaceutical rep goes to a lot of doctors, right? They're really entrenched in the medical community. Do you know how the doctors learn about a lot of the drugs that come out? Their pharmaceutical rep comes by, gives you some brochures, gives you samples, gives you a little promo, and then off to pushing the next pharmaceutical drug. So the ad tells you to talk to the doctor, and what does the doctor know? Very little more than what you got on a commercial. The physician is the ultimate decider in treatment, she said. Now let me ask another question. Is that all the doctors know? Should they do research and find out all about the drug? Yes. How many actually do that, do you think? You know how busy an MD's life is? In a statement, Bristol Myers Senior Vice President Teresa Bettetti said, Opdivo ad plays an important role in educating patients about new treatment options and fostering informed conversations between patients and their doctors. Hospitals also have drawn criticism for overstating their success in treating cancer. In '96, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, a for-profit chain, settled allegations from the Federal Trade Commission that they made false and unsubstantiated claims in advertising and promoting their cancer treatments. The company's commercials, dozens of which are featured on their website, boast of offering genomic testing and precision cancer treatment. That's one of the latest bells that everybody's reading and hearing. The commercials don't tell patients that these tests aim to pair cancer patients with drugs that target the specific mutations in their tumors, are rarely successful, Prasad said. In clinical trials, these tests have matched only 6.4% of patients with the drug. According to Prasad's 2016 article in Nature, because these drugs manage to shrink only a fraction of tumors, estimating that just 1.5% of patients actually benefit from precision oncology. Is that what they tell you in the ads and commercials and everything else? In a statement, Cancer Treatment Centers of America said, "We use national media to help educate cancer patients and their families about the latest diagnostic tools and treatment options. All of our advertising undergoes meticulous review for clinical accuracy as well as legal approval to ensure we tell our story to an informative and responsible manner and in compliance with federal guidelines." No bias there, right? Targeting melanoma. For more than a decade, the FDA approved no new treatments for metastatic melanoma. Patients typically died within a year. In 2011, since 2011, the FDA approved 11 new treatments, including several immunotherapies, which aims to harness the immune system to fight cancer. Researchers have tested immunotherapies against a variety of tumors, leading to approved drugs for lung cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, and others. Such success has led doctors to label cancer immunotherapy as a game changer. Yet, these treatments, which were initially assumed to be more gentle than chemotherapy, can provoke fatal immune system attacks on organs. Excuse me?
This is exactly what happened to our mother. This treatment, and it actually it killed her. These testing, treatments, whatever, that they were doing on her, supposedly to stop it, and slow it down, and it actually killed her sooner, and it was more painful for her.
And many times what they're asking or telling you that you need are the new experimental drugs.
It was experimental.
And let me just say that one thing that the medical community is very good at is gathering statistics. Okay? That's one of their expertises. And that's one of the things that tells off on the medical community as far as what's claimed and what's done. Now, of course, the medical doctors are really the pawns in the whole scheme of the thing. And it's not your pharmaceutical reps or all these other, they're pawns as well. It's the powers that be. The ones who run the whole show, the money show. Michaels, let me ask you a question. How many people have known someone who's had cancer? Typically, it's everybody. Yeah. How many people have known someone that's passed from cancer? Do you know more people that's passed from cancer than have survived cancer? It's not a fun story. Michael's brother, who tried immunotherapy as well as other approved and experimental treatments, survived 3.5 years after his diagnosis. Let me just stop there and say that with metastasized melanoma, That's a long time. So really, the lead of this story is this guy and his disappointment in what they went through. But let me say that he's bearing on the outside, pushing the envelope of the term that you live fighting melanoma. From everything that I have heard, getting the best results that you can get by whatever therapies you're using and the combinations of them, it's 3 to 4 years. But a lot of times it can be 30 days to 6 months. That's the majority. So that might lead many oncologists to describe his story as a success. I can see that. Michael sees no reason to celebrate. He wanted more than a short-term survival for his brother. I thought we were going to have a treatment that we'd at least have a good block of quality time. Now, to me, that is the failure in explaining what's really going to take place and what the real numbers are. I talk to a lot of people that come here that come already diagnosed from their medical doctor and already have been under treatments or offered treatments. And one of the questions I've asked them is that, did your doctor tell you that if you follow everything that they say to do, what your percentages are? And what I get is most all the time they don't. They don't tell them. I think that's important. Wouldn't you want to know? Or tell them what their quality of life is going to be, not only from the cancer, but from the treatments. Would that have a bearing on what you would choose to do? I'd want that information. Cancer centers spend big money to advertise their services. A total spending by cancer centers on advertising has increased from $54 million in 2005, and that's per year, to $273 million in 2014. Now, it is a business, isn't it? So if you're going to spend $273 million in a year advertising, you're going to be raking in a lot of money, not only for cost and everything else, but just to cover the advertising, representing a 220% increase. The number of advertisements increased nearly tenfold during this time, from 76,095 to 708,935. As the saying goes, when you're trying to find out what's going on, follow the money trail. So that was the article that I was sent. That was in USA Today, and that was back in April. I thought it was very interesting and very telling, because seldom do you get in the main media such information. Usually it's all smiles and going right along with the propaganda that everything is wonderful and great and it's even going to be better. So this is cancer patient survival rates, the SEER program results for a 10 years of follow-up. Most all studies, different medical studies, end at 5 years. I had to search and search and search to find this 10-year study. And the SEER, S-E-E-R, is kind of where the buck stops, where medical researchers and community looks for statistics of what's going on. So just a little bit about this. It says the 5-year survival rate has become almost a standard indicator of patient survival, even though there is no specific biological significance. Did you get that? About having survived 5 years. The 5-year rate, however, is a convenient endpoint for assessing patient outcome. Although there are cancer registries that have been in existence for many years, few of them have been population-based in reporting of patient follow-up, especially for periods longer than 10 years. An exception is the Connecticut Tumor Registry. They're doing it, and that's where they're pulling this information. We decided to utilize a 10-year follow-up data available from the National Cancer Institute's surveillance, epidemiology, and end results. That's the SEER report. It is a much more representative of the general survival of cancer patients in the U.S. than any single geographic area would be. So that gives you an example of what that is about. For most cancers, it is clear that the chances of surviving for a second 5 years is much greater than for surviving the first 5. However, for some cancers, such as pancreas, very few people survive the first 5 years. So it depends on what type of cancer you're talking about. But if they do, there is only a very small chance that they will ultimately die of that cancer in the next 5 years. So that's a type of cancer that you would typically die quickly. And if you survive for that period of time, then your chances are much greater. Different from other cancers, which on the average, 6 years, if you're just going across the board, is the higher death rate. So I find it interesting that the cutoff is at 5 years. For other cancers, such as breast cancer, many patients survive the first 5-year period, but this high survival rate is not an indicator that all will ultimately survive their cancer. So it's giving you 2 different scenarios. Even though many of the 5 to 10-year rates were high, the fact that not all of them were high underscores the chronic nature of some forms of cancer and emphasizes the need for continued medical surveillance, obviously. So, a graph. I did a little search this morning for about an hour before I came and tried to find a new update of the SEER report to get the latest stuff, and it's totally changed. In an hour, I couldn't find it. What I did find was lots of stuff to go through and file through to try and get some little statement or a graph. I could not find any charts. I'm sure they're there somewhere. They got to be there somewhere. But may I just say that they seem to be so much harder to find now? This is not easy. I mean, it's not hard to find. And in fact, if you go and view the, and it's about a book size with all the statistics, it breaks it down, all males and females, all ages, all races, or males or females, age groups, ethnic groups, everything else. So it's lots of fine details. And we have the link to this on the other lecture on our homepage that you can go in and find that SEER report and go through that data. So let's just look at what it says here. Long-term survival rates for patients diagnosed. All races, males and females. All sites, I mean all types of cancer. Number of cases studied, 160,238. Observed that survived 5 years, 40. You want me to repeat that? 160,238. Observed, survived 5 years, 40. Observed, survived 10 years, 28. So if you break it down, it has a list of the different ones. And by this particular page and report, it shows breast cancer within most number of cases, which is 23,289. Survived 5 years observed, 65. You want to talk percentages? What percentage would that be? That's very minute. 10 years, 47. Melanoma, 3,009. 5 years, 69. Relatively, that sounds pretty good. In 10 years, 56. For lung cancer, 21,474. 5 years, 10. That's a long way from 1%. In 10 years, 6. Liver cancer, 950 studied. 3 survived in 5 years. 2, 10 years. So if you can make it 5 years, what this is also telling you that you do have a much, much better percentage in making it 10 years. It's pretty tough to make it to 5 years. Questions? Doesn't it sound wonderful? Doesn't it sound we're on the verge of a cure? We're right around the corner from a cure. We've got this battle done. We can X out cancer. We're good. Something else I pulled, the NCHS data brief. This is changes in the leading cause of death, recent patterns in heart disease and cancer mortality. So one thing it's going to say is heart disease has consistently been the leading cause of death in the U.S. Mortality burden of cancer has surpassed that of heart disease in several states. It's gaining. It's gaining. Cancer is gaining state by state, you might say, to win the race of being the #1 killer overall. Cancer is now the leading cause of death for non-Hispanic, Asian, or Pacific Islander and Hispanic populations. So let's do this. This is how has the mortality burden of heart disease and cancer changed from 1950 to 2014? So this graph, if you want to come in on this, is showing the two. You might not be able to read the little stuff, but the dark line is cancer. This line is heart disease. So heart disease is doing like what it does when you look at a lot of different forms of death. It's kind of up and down and doing different things. But it was down here, had quite a rise, and now is declining. That's good. What's cancer doing? In every graph I've looked at, including the ones I looked at this morning, it's pretty steady. So you're going to see lines that are either going up like this or lines that are more kind of straight across with a slight incline. But I would call that steady. It's the most steady line that I've ever seen in any graphs for any causes of death. Looks like we're winning the battle, doesn't it? Boy, there's a lot of silence in here. None of this is my opinion. This is all statistics from the people that are saying we're winning the battle. So this is not outside information. This is their own statistics. Have you known any kind of population growth in your area? We're having a lot of population growth, explosion. They're calling this bigger than the baby boomer age. And that was pretty big. So populations and percentages play into all this as well. So one of the questions is, are people getting cancer more often, more unusual? In other words, you've always had cases where a teenager or a baby might get cancer. But how many young people and teenagers and babies are you seeing with cancer today? Far more. A lot more. Why? Ever thought about that?
Toxins.
Yes. Bottom line, summed up in general, one word: toxic. Toxic environment. So here's a quote that came out this year from Johns Hopkins University. Not one of the little guys, right? The typical American goes through more physical, chemical, and emotional stress in 30 days than their grandparents during their entire lifetime. Chemical, toxic. So our environment in every way. Do you know what else you have? I get to do all the dry stuff. People ask me, well, what book have you read lately? What this, that, or the other? Talk about you read dry data. We're slowly killing ourselves, and I'd say for the name of convenience. But it's interesting how you have scientists working in countries all around the world that are developing things to help make the world better. But you know how most of them are doing it these days? Chemically. So in many countries around the world where you have your scientists and researchers developing chemicals and then want to put it out on the market, are being totally rejected from their own country and say, no, we don't want that here. You cannot use that here. That will not be on our market. Do you know where they go, all the countries in the world, to market their drugs? The U.S., number one, and Canada, number two. Because a lot of people think, well, I'll just go to Canada. They're so much more natural and everything. They're number two to market chemicals. What do we typically say when somebody wants to market a chemical to us? Let's see how we can make money off of it. Yes, we'll do it. We have more chemicals in our food. We have more chemicals in our farming. We have more chemicals in everything than anybody else. I work with a lot of professionals that their jobs are killing them because of the different types of chemical exposures. It's just, it's wild, it's crazy, absolutely nuts. So what do we need? Part of why I'm doing this, education. We need truth. One of the things that I have been beating the drum for, especially this year, is what I often get from people that come to us for whatever reasons after they've been diagnosed with cancer. Somewhere in there they're going to say, it was such a shock. It was such a surprise that they had cancer. You ever known anybody that didn't say that? They call it one of the silent killers. I've never had anybody come to me and was diagnosed with cancer and said, yeah, I figured that would happen. I expected it, and right about now. Of course it's a shock. And a lot of times it is spread, it is advanced before they find out, before they have symptoms. It's serious. So one of the things that we're trying to do, because does the medical community, we have a nurse, and who knows, if we had more interactive online, how many other medical people are there? Is there anything in standardized medicine that will test for pre-cancer? Let's say test your risk state.
PSA for
the PSA for prostate, looking at the numbers, and if the numbers go up, and help me with, ideally you want 0, right?
Well, yeah.
You're not usually going to get 0. So what's the first flags that start coming up? It's
I'm
okay.
on call. I'm not going to take it.
Okay.
I'm on call,
So instead of me saying, what numbers in the PSA would raise the first flags that you need to investigate to see if there's something going on?
Above 8 or 10, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And
Maybe lower.
to me, that's a little lenient from what I'm hearing from a lot of doctors. They'll start raising the flag sometimes at 4, 5, and 6. I think because they like to do other treatments like biopsies and other stuff like that. Let's do some other procedures. And my opinion, the last thing you ever want to do if there's a flag that comes up is do a biopsy. Can I explain this for a moment? If you suspect cancer somewhere, whether it's prostate or an organ or anything else, and I understand the medical side that they want absolute proof. They want to be able to see physically that there is cancer and prove it. Look at it in a microscope and say, yes, cancer. So, okay, that's a given. But what happens with the procedure? If you do have cancer and you do a biopsy, and let's say that it's encapsulated, you just unencapsulate it. What's the typical time you get your report back? 2-3 weeks? You know how much cancer can spread once you unencapsulate it in 2-3 weeks? How many people get told that, well, we need to do a biopsy, but it could spread the cancer if there's cancer? They don't tell them that. Do they tell them any precautions to use if they're going to do biopsy that may help prevent the spread? I've never heard of a case doing that in standardized medicine. Have you ever heard of one? There's a lot missing because there's plenty of information out there to help you with that. There are also other tests. You may say with my, whatever you'd say, over 20 years ago, I had cancer, kidney cancer. It engulfed my left kidney. God healed me. No ifs, ands, or buts. I can't point to anything else. I also was diagnosed with metastasized melanoma that was spread through the body. And that's a very serious, aggressive cancer. I'm still here, and I don't have it. And that was recovered in 8 months. But I didn't do any biopsies. And as a matter of fact, I didn't do any standardized medical test here except to go to a lab and get blood drawn to send it off to Europe to get the test that verified the other testing. I found it by our own testing here. You could call it frequency testing, just to stay in general. And the frequency testing was red flags all over the place. You've got melanoma spread throughout your body. And it was detected in places that were not physical because it's frequency testing that can test pre-cancer cells. So when you get it actually tested, I had it in the skull, I had it in my lymph nodes, I had it in my spleen, I had it in near the head of the femur bone. It's the largest bone in the body. And everything went downhill from there. But only using natural things, 100%, and doing nothing invasive, praise God, by Him, in 8 months, I was totally clear. And now, I'm healthier than I've been in a long, long time. And in some aspects, I could say decades. Because of the approach. No question. People that you see that have an issue, or they just go and have a test and they're diagnosed with cancer, and they go through the treatments, and the doctor will tell you, and what are the treatments? As a lay term, you might say, or a slurred term, by a representative that represents over 1,000 integrated doctors in Washington, says, well, the procedures are slice, dice, burn, and poison. Yeah, so what do? They cut, they radiate, they do chemo. What else? Well, we talked about immunotherapy now. How successful was that? So there's some other things that are coming along, but they're not getting that greater results. There's the hype, but the bottom line is not getting that greater results. You've seen some of these people. What's their quality of life? What do they look like? You may not ask them their quality of life, their pain and discomfort, but you see them. Do they look healthy? You guys are quiet. Like what?
Death warmed up.
Death warmed up. You know, I really thought I was going to die. I thought I was done with the melanoma. I had the look. You know, the look that you're dead and it just hadn't happened yet. And the pain and the suffering and everything else. But you know what? There are answers. And I didn't give up that battle. I fought because I couldn't find my quit button. Because when I realized how severe it is, and I've been working with cancer for a long time, naturally, I didn't think much of my chances. I just really didn't think much of my chances, medically or naturally. But I've gone through a very severe learning curve. Over the years, from 30 years ago, I've had some pretty steep learning curves. 20 years ago, I had a very steep learning curve. In the past 3 years, I've had the steepest learning curve. We're learning all the time and being able to help people that want the help. Now, we'll say that we respect a person's right to choose whatever they want to choose, or combinations of what they want to choose. But statistically, I've just seen over the years that people that want to do everything that standardized medicine will recommend and do the natural things, the percentages are not as great as when you just do the natural things. Because these are impairing your immune system, they're toxic, and they're, for instance, taking things out of your body that you need to function properly. And then there's the recovery time of such surgeries, which impair you. Now, I'm not saying this is great and this is a cure or anything like that. I'm talking about percentages and odds are a huge difference. Questions? Some of the things we use, if you want to see a lot of what was done, and especially what I did, which I don't recommend for anybody else, what I recommend is to treat each person individually. Not just for the type of cancer that they have, but for who they are, their lifestyle, and everything else that you can include. One of the ways that I think of it is we take a person, we turn them upside down, take everything out, and we only put back in their life what is for recovery of cancer. And we mess with all kinds of aspects of their life as long as they're willing. So what is the toughest thing in treating cancer? The person, not the cancer. And if you want to compare the two, cancer is a piece of cake compared to the person's compliance with all that needs to be done. That's the hard part. You know what the hardest part really is that I get most common with everybody? You could load them with things to do, things to take, what not to do, but when you mess with their diet, then it gets personal and it gets very emotional. And I have people that call more often and more emotional and hysterical over what they can or can't eat. When I try to explain it simply, like, okay, what we're really evaluating here is on one side of the scales, we're talking life, okay? On the other side of the scales, we're talking whatever it is that you want, what your desires are, what you feel, think, ... Don't forget that this is what you're weighing out. We worked with a pastor that I won't name names because you recognize, like others, and I didn't find out, and he passed, okay? I didn't find out until much later with some of the people that were coming and helping him, and one of them slipped and says, as soon as we leave here, you can get your treat. I turned around and said, what treat? Chocolate. Daily dose of chocolate, because he was doing good at his protocol. How would you interpret that? It's the general mindset of, here's the mindset. I'm doing very, very good at doing good things. Now I'm going to reward myself with something that's bad. What a mindset.
Addiction, sugar.
It is. So sugar, right? What does it do? It impairs your immune system. Is there caffeine in chocolate? Yes. It wipes out frequency medicine. It helps void a lot of the things that you're doing, especially related to frequency medicine. There's a lot of things there that are impairing your system. And if you do it every 24 hours, you're never out from under the influence. He died. I can't definitively say that the reason he died was because of that piece of chocolate every day. But I can say that that was an impairment that he had every day that worked against him. And it's hard to get across to people how it affects you. A lot of people think I can pop all kinds of stuff in my mouth and it's okay. You know, and it goes through and this, that, and the other. So what if you popped a drop of strychnine in your mouth? Just a drop, one drop. What if you had less than a drop of a very infectious virus in that drop? How would it affect your whole body? Or a drop of this, or a drop of that. So people are not understanding that an amount of something that's not good for you, the amount of it is not so much taking away from its effect on you. It's the exposure of it. Yes.
Something that always hits home with people, you say this tiny drop. What I say is, okay, here's your dinner. It's really nutritious, and there's just a little tiny bit of dog poo in there. Who's going to eat that?
That's great. I love that. Very good. I like that. So it's a matter of getting a correct perspective and understanding. As a matter of fact, if they couldn't even see it, but you said it's there, that would be enough.
Yeah.
So some of the things that we do, and this is very, very brief, I'm just going to go, the Zyto with extra creative software that integrates into special Zyto testing, and that's a story we could talk about for a few days. Live and dry cell dark field microscopy, TKM therapy, and proper energy circulation are vital. You know, with cancer, one of the things you're having is not just your pathways, the circulation not happening. Intercellular, you don't have energy, chemical, understood energy circulating within the cells. So even things that you're taking and doing might not be able to affect your cells in intercellular because the energy within the cell is not functioning correctly. Without taking the time to draw that and break all that down, this is something that helps. It does great all by itself with nothing else. But if you include this in with your supplemental protocol, your other type of therapies, oxygen therapy, whatever else you're doing, it's going to help all of those work far, far better. But it's the one people don't want to do because it takes time. Time is another thing people have an issue with. Well, can't I just get the shot or the peel? Or how about just cut it out so I can go on and live my life? This includes intercellular level. I just explained that. Yeah. Extraordinary supplemental treatments, which we're on a steep learning curve with that all the time. Specifically for cancer cells, tumors, and malfunctioning cells. Pulse frequency technologies like the PFG2Z. We include calculations to amp up the frequencies to be more penetrating throughout the body for truly effective treatment. This requires amplification between 30,000 and 70,000 hertz. Direct evolution of Rife theory and technology, which is the latest technology on that. For instance, Rife, most people have heard about Rife. You heard about Rife? If you hadn't, go back and read the papers. I mean, he was on front page in papers back in the 30s, all over the place in this country and even throughout the world. And then after he was really getting great results, then they started throwing everything at him. You create something new, great. Oh, it works? No, we got to do something about that. A lot of his stuff was looking at it through the scope and testing with different frequencies to get the reaction, finding out the frequency of something and finding frequencies that, for instance, kill it, like cancer cells, right? One of the differences is we're talking about in that environment. But when you're talking about in a body where you have depth of tissue, you have different densities of tissue, you have bone and organs and fluid systems, just the exposure to those frequencies many times is not effective enough. So that's why we amp those frequencies up. Find the ones that particularly pertain to that individual, not just using a library set of things to do, but what that particular person needs, and then amping them up to the right degree to get the right results.
How is that done?
Oh, I'd have to kill you if I told you.
Okay.
It's done by a calculator. You have a scientific calculator, and there's a formula that when you find the right frequency, you amp it up through a mathematical calculation so that you hold the integrity of the frequency, but the amplification is raised.
Okay.
Special fungal treatments. Fungus is very important. There's a lot of cancers that are fungal based. We get our best ones for treatment from Germany, which is very, very hard to get. Remember that most cancers are fungal based, and what we're using actually is a combination because there's all types of fungus, not just the more than 30 strains of candida and stuff like that. There's a lot of them. So we use some formulas that have combinations of all the different types of fungus to be anti, so that we can use one thing to help treat a broad spectrum of different types of fungus in a very effective way. We used to be able to get those here in this country. FDA shut them down. There were no lawsuits. There was no suits from damage of anyone, not one single person. It amounted to, we don't like that. So then we found an outlet through Canada. But through trade agreements, they shut them down. So now we get them through another source that I won't say that gets it from Germany. So effective bacterial treatments, pH balancing, hydration, sleep states, emotional state, and reframing emotions is essential. We could talk a long time about that. Most people want to overlook emotion stuff. You know, the reason you may have it's because of an emotion. And you could do all kinds of stuff, and if you don't deal with the emotion, you die. Did I mix words there? Mine started in the forehead with the melanoma. I used a treatment that I've used on myself and for other people for many, many years that's very, very effective, that will kill skin cancers in 3 days. Dead. Gone. Didn't work on me. So I tried it again. I tried it for 4 days. Didn't do it. So I tried it again. 5 days. I tried it again, and I was going to do it until it dies. But after close to 7 days for that next round, I was in such horrible pain and not able to sleep because of the pain. I said, okay, this is all I can tolerate. And then I called the manufacturer and I explained what happened. And what they're saying is impossible. It always works. So I explained, look, I've been using this for a long time. I know it always works, but it didn't work on me. What could be possibly going on? So to make it short, I eventually found out it was about emotions from stuff when I was a child that has a correlation to my forehead. And when I dealt with those emotions, I didn't treat it again, it went. And if that's not enough to make an emphasis on how important emotions are, I got nothing else to say. So, EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, allergies, inflammation, weight loss or wasting is always both of those are a huge issue with cancer. May I say that doctors understand chemistry. They know chemistry, okay? But what they also operate within the parameters that they're told. They can't operate out of that. And there are things that you know, hormonal and everything else, without drawing all that out, that relate to inflammation with cancer and muscle wasting. And the only thing that they use in hospitals is the one thing that will not work. It's a type of potassium. It's potassium chloride. Yeah. And potassium chloride is in studies shows that it will not work for that. Most all other potassiums will work for that. But they're only regulated to use the one that doesn't work for that. Try to make sense out of that one. So it's important to address all these different things. We have something from the Rus trilobata plant an all-natural herbal tea containing one ingredient that results in a powerful anti-carcinogenic, antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, stimulates the immune system, generally detoxifies the body, and has a slight diuretic effect. Effective treatments for thyroid is critical. Detoxify it, build strength, proper functioning, and provide protection for it, which is protection for your entire body. Remember, all cancer cases, according to medical studies, exhibit a hypothyroid. Dietary plan includes all aspects of what not to eat. Food preparation, including all things that a person would consume for maximizing results individually for cancer recovery. Individually, emphasis on individually. Building the immune system. Detoxifying the body, including numerous ways to effectively detox heavy metals, fungus, bacteria, parasites, virus, mycobacteria, and toxins, chemical toxins, cleaning the colon, gallbladder, liver, lymph system, your filtering systems, and more. Most important is advanced testing to determine cancer risk. That's the main thing I'm interested in. I'd far rather find out what a person's risk is and get them in a, if I could say no or low risk, we can say low risk, right? Low risk situation, which we've been able to do with a lot of people over the past couple of years, especially this year. In that process, we have also found some red flags from people that come in that wanted to get testing or help from something. And I'm not an MD. I can't diagnose squat. I probably can't even tell you got a hangnail, okay? So I will send them off to their medical doctor and have them check an area, like one man that has problems with coughing. Well, he had red flags all over the place in the testing for lung cancer. So sent him off to get tested, and he found 2 large tumors in his lungs. So there's lots of reasons to get tested. According to medical statistics in this country, a person gets an average of 1,000 cancer cells per day. We're not talking about carcinogens, talking cancer cells. So why doesn't 100% of the population have cancer? Because when your immune system is working properly, it searches them out and destroys them. So that's part of what we're testing also, is how well is your body keeping up with your daily carcinogenic load and cancer cell load. And if it's not good, we do things specifically for that person to get that under control. Because when your body is functioning the way it was created to function, you have defense against viruses, cancer, on and on and on. If you don't think so, we need some more education. Plus, personally designed programs to address any level of cancer risk, high or low. Plus, suggested protocol, this is another hard one for people to do, for prevention. In other words, they come in, they get tested, they're not in an ideal state, so we get them in a very good state. What is the person typically looking for in the long run? When can I stop everything and go live my life how I want to? One of my focuses is, if we're going to do this, if that's the goal, what about prevention? What if we get you in a good state? Would you like to stay there? Would you like to do some minor things to make sure you stay in a great state? Now, I'm sorry, to me it's kind of a no-brainer that that would be a good thing to do. But it is one of the harder things to do for people to agree with. The education process a person goes through is extremely valuable and fairly intense because it addresses so many aspects of our life and environment for health, recovery, and a healthy lifestyle. Most of the things addressed are not known by the population. Many are not commonly known by those even in healthy lifestyles and natural medicine education. We specialize in what standardized medicine does not do well or is not able to do at all, and often especially what they say is impossible to accomplish. Our track record speaks for itself. What's impossible to accomplish? So genetic stuff, right? We've got more than we can list that have had recovery. So when someone tells you that something cannot be done, let me tell you the rest of what they're not saying. There is nothing I know to do for you. But most people think of it as there is nothing that can be done for you. So my thing is they should state the truth, which they don't seldom want to do, and simply say, I don't know what to do for you. I don't have a solution for you, rather than to say, there is no solution for you. You are going to die. Or if you have some disability in your health that is not fatal, then you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. No, we have seen too many times where that's not true. Too many times where I have seen a new case that I have never dealt with. I have to look up online what it's even about, and I'm thinking in my head, whoa, this seems like the mountain, too big, and then see it resolved. So, questions?
What about autoimmune diseases, things like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia? You guys typically deal with a lot of those types of cases here?
Yes. We have a new one coming this week because we have a terrible track record.
Terrible track record of what? You're treating that? Or?
That's a joke. People come almost 100% of the time because somebody referred them. They referred them why? Because they've heard of the results from somebody else for something that's the same or something else. So that's why people come.
I mean, would you say most of the people come here specifically for cancer?
It goes up and down. There's times there's over 50% of the load that's cancer, and times it's lower than that. So we usually have a steady stream of something related to cancer. And we get everything from A to Z. We get people, sometimes we get people local, and I really, really like that because you can help them more frequent and easy. But we get people from around the country and around the world, and still from word of mouth. Yeah. It is more difficult, especially if it's out of the country, unless they have the ability to come often or to come and stay for long duration, simply because it's hard to treat somebody that's not here. Or should I have said help? Maybe I should have said treat.
What about restless leg syndrome? Do you
TKM is a priority for that. I mean, you can use other things for the symptoms, and especially during the process, but I find that TKM is the main solution for that, which would be the 15 sequence and making sure there's no other obstacles, like the 2 is working properly, bladder pathway energy is working properly. So then if you do the main thing, which would be 15 sequence, and if that doesn't resolve it and keep it resolved, then you're looking for the obstacles. What's keeping that from working once you get it to working? Something's sabotaging it. So then you've got to search through the correlations to see what's sabotaging it and resolve that. So it's many things with the body is not an A for A, B for B. Most all the time it's not an A for A, B for B. You do what works if you have the knowledge of what it is. And then everybody's individual. They're complex, physically, mentally, emotionally, their environment, their life, everything. So you have to treat them as an individual. So then you're looking for additional obstacles or sabotagers from the A for A, B for B not working. Does it make sense? And if you don't go that route, then you fall into standard percentages of what doesn't work. Well, we get 20% recovery. Well, that's pitiful. Although there are some statistics here that said 1.5% recovery. Yay! We're on the verge of a cure.
Do you have a brochure with all the things you do and the prices outside?
No.
Oh, okay.
For one reason, even stating some of the things here and thinking that I may put this online later is a little risky, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is. I
Yes.
thought about that.
So if I put in print what we do, it sticks my neck out even further to where I could get to the point where I'm not here. Which that time will come sooner or later anyway, but I'd rather it be from natural causes.
Does it typically take a long time to just get an appointment just for, like an initial?
Not really, not compared to a lot of places. After my last looking at death in the face, which was not my first time, because I see it sometimes as the enemy has been trying to take me out since I was born. So at age 1 was the first time I nearly died, and it's been periodic through with different things. So you ask, why is a person in their field? Well, that's one of the reasons I'm in this field.
How long does it typically take? I mean, is it a long waiting list to even see?
It's not a long waiting list, and one of the reasons is I don't wear suits anymore. I don't do this, that, or the other. I'm taking a very relaxed view. After my last bout, I am not getting on the little rat cage running around in circles. I am not going to stress myself out, and I am not going to live sleepless nights over people that won't cooperate with the protocol. I will acknowledge their choices, and I heard a student one time say in a class that I was teaching, TKM class, and they explained this analogy. If you're in a rowboat and like a ship goes down and there's people in the water and there's sharks or freezing water or whatever it is, people need surviving, and you got room in your boat to save lives, are you going to be rowing towards the person that's swimming away from you or helping those that are swimming towards you? So I'm going to be helping those that are swimming towards me and trying to get in the boat rather than chasing somebody that don't want to do it. Can I give you a little, where is that statistics? There was someone that came from out of state because they had a relative come and check us out first, and they came back and said, you really need to do this. And they had liver cancer, 4th stage. So they came up, and their family came with them, and they had questions, and we ran through testing, and I explained protocol, and I put them on a protocol, and they had problems with the protocol, like most people do. Part of it's emotional, some is what you can do. And what we do is we adjust the protocol for the individual. We like people to stay in contact with us so we can adjust it for the individual so that it works. They were here for about a week and then decided to go back and not follow through. And this is a situation where I had also, as I mentioned earlier, asked, has your doctor told you what your chances are if you do everything they say? Do you know where you stand if you do the standardized medicine route? I had to ask it about 3 times because they weren't really getting the question. Well, he said I needed to do this, that, and that's not what I'm asking. What are your chances of survival if you do everything exactly like he says? So then I pulled out the SEER report, and I showed it to the spouse, not the person. I didn't want to put them in a shock, but I wanted somebody there to get the results. And this was the one that's 21,474, and in 5 years, 10% survive if you do what they say to do. So I have no guarantees for you. Who am I? I'm not a prophet going to tell you who's going to live or die, but the difference is we don't do toxic things, we don't do invasive things, we don't do things to tear down your system. We try to help you every way possible and refer out to people that have other expertise to help you recover in a natural way, to increase your odds as much as possible to fully, absolutely recover. They chose not to. You know what one of the comments was? Well, I could go and do my chemo once a month and do whatever else I want in between. But do you realize what the result of that will be? Odds are you die. You know your Life quality under chemo, as it gets more and more advanced, I've seen a lot of it. It's not good. So you have people that make interesting decisions when they do know the facts. What they believe, I don't know. Maybe they believe that maybe I made this up or something. I have no idea what they believe. But I'll tell you what I see oftentimes. The less a person can do, that's the choice they want to make.
Okay, so I know TKM is the most important, but what would you suggest starting if you were odds are of getting cancer or, going through
Zyto
reducing
testing.
your,
Because TKM doesn't test you.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. I know TKM is the most important thing with, health, but would you start with the blood or the...
Both. That and the Zyto testing. Now, a lot of people will think, oh, Zyto, well, I can go anywhere and do that. Zyto is a piece of technology. There's some Zyto software and equipment that I consider a joke. It's just a marketing tool to sell supplements of a particular brand that you choose. It does really no diagnostic or anything else. So there's all kind of levels of Zyto. Zyto used to be much better until the FDA started taking things away. What helped me find out the cancer that I had was a Zyto program from Zyto that was called Cancer. And it would name types of cancer and locations. FDA took that out. They didn't come here. Right through the internet, they took it out of the computer, took that program out. They took another one out called Diseases. Why? Well, it makes sense. That could be misconstrued as diagnosing, right? So those are gone. So there's another doc that got his geeks that has developed software that integrates in with Zyto that use different wording, you might say coding, to help give you a picture of your state, whether it's precancer cells, your risk, or other states that are going on. And that's one of the things that is used along with the other types of testing.
Is it kind of like the Computron?
It's the next step beyond
That's what
Computron.
I was wondering, yeah.
So it has, in other words, it tests 2 things per second. You put your hand on a cradle, and what it does is it sends frequencies to that cradle, 2 per second, and whatever is touching this cradle, it's finding out if they exist in that person. And if they do exist, it comes back with a numeric readout of the level of stress that it's causing on that person. So after you've done thousands of these things and get used to what's going on, aside from understanding it, you can find out pretty clearly what's going on. And there are variables. Is the person hydrated? You can get misinformation. Your numbers will be little. But there are things in there that you can tell whether they're skewed or not so that you can make the difference. There's a lot of other things that are involved that means that the technology is very operator dependent.
How much does it cost?
$5 million.
Okay. I don't mean the machine.
But there is a discount. What is the standard testing?
580.
580 is standard testing. After the first one, it's discounted $100 for the follow-throughs. And I did print out some of these. It was a last-minute thought. And so we scratched through the date of some old coupons. And for those that are interested online, let us know. We'll email you one. 25% off any of our testing services. So 25% can amount to a lot of money.
Yeah.
So make sure you get one of those. What was the other part of your question? Testing, what's the first thing? Does I tell that?
Oh, just
So we come up with the results.
what you would be, the sequence of what you would do. So you
So we
just
look at
go
the
through-
results, and another separate test that we have to run, because that was also taken out by the FDA, is bacteria. So now we have another program to run to do very extensive look at bacteria that Zyto does not have. So these other things that I'm talking about, the standard Zyto program doesn't have those. And then there's knowing how to read them and interpret them and all this, that, and the other. So we explain that to the person, and then the point is, okay, what do we do from here? We can design a protocol for you to address this if you want to do that, which is the next natural step, right there on the spot. We used to, without this equipment, be able to take a person from one level to the next. In other words, this is a stair-step process in about 3 months, which means whatever protocol you're doing is essentially obsolete to keep you moving forward with a good momentum in 3 months. But now we've got that down to 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
It's a much more detailed, accurate, and effective process to move a person through more quickly. With their cooperation, which is the biggest obstacle in recovery, is cooperation.
Diane.
Yes.
Do you typically work with people like that already have like an MD? And I mean, because it seems like I'm somebody that I agree that the natural way is the best way. I would prefer to stay away from pharmaceuticals, that type of thing. I'm in total agreement with that approach, but I'm saying I've been to many doctors, and I'm with a new doctor now, and I'm going. I've spent tons of money,
It costs tons of money.
Yeah, I know, and I'm saying, and I'm doing it out of pocket, but I'm saying, do you typically work with people that have a primary care physician, or are you typically working with people that have kind of completely, disregarded
Both
that?
ways. It's a mixture
Does it
that
typically
fluctuates.
work well, I know, that's where I guess it seems like it's a conflict of interest, If you have a primary care physician, you're going to have pharmaceuticals and all that type of thing. It seems like it'd be best to solely be your approach as opposed to trying to, do them both.
Depending on the circumstance, generally the answer is yes. The other thing in testing, we also test products to see which will work best for you, so that I don't use what's the phrase? Your best educated, experienced professional guess. So we test individual for that person's state and their need for what brand and products that will work best for them. You could take a vitamin C or D or E or any simple thing, and one may have very adverse effects while another may be great for them. And guessing or thinking of a quality brand or processing doesn't work, because everybody's an individual. You really have to test them to find out.
Do you use things like energy testing or that type of thing?
That's Zyto as well.
Right.
So there is a lot of things that you can have extra benefit from, for instance, kinesiology, muscle testing, all that. But the bottom line is, it's not a consistent scientific parameters. You can't get the same thing because it's so easy to influence. So if you, for example, if you have a preconceived idea about how something's going to test and you muscle test, you've tainted the testing already. So it's a very helpful tool if you do it correctly. Most people don't know how to do it correctly, which also involves removing your opinion completely out of the situation and whoever you're testing. Then you're hitting more accurate. But now we got technology. Technology doesn't have an opinion. And you can't sway it by your opinion. So that's what we like to use. It gets really in depth. If you want to see something maybe more detailed, which is the most comprehensive look at doing something, more than what most people would ever need, then you could look at that DVD set on cancer. I think it's how I recovered from 4th stage metastasized cancer.
Was that part of the one that was online?
That one's not online. That one's on DVDs. The other one will give you a lot of good information as well. So we get a combination. I find that, if I am working with someone that was diagnosed with cancer and they come, I really prefer that there be a medical doctor involved somewhere. Because bottom line, I can't diagnose and I can't definitively tell you quantitatively when you're done. I can give you the indicators. In other words, there are tests that we do that are cancer frequencies, and they do much more fine testing than the medical community could even think is possible. But it's not quantitative testing. And there's a big difference. So what the medical community focuses more on is quantitative. How big is the tumor? Where is it? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? What I'm finding is it there? Where is it most likely at? And how much stress is it causing on your system? When it's not causing any stress, it's gone. But if you want to know that you know, with a quantitative test, you got to go back to the medical community. Yeah. And there's things with tests that I am totally in disagreement with, like biopsies. When there's any risk of cancer, I'm just totally against biopsies. But if a person insists on having a biopsy with their doctor, then there are things that we want to do ahead of time and during the process to safeguard them and with follow-through to stop the risk of transferring cancer from one place to another. So when someone does come with cancer, there are things that we have to do that day. And we have yet to have anyone that has had cancer that moved to another area or that had metastasized cancer in several areas that moved somewhere else. It was contained where it was at.
You're saying when they come to you, you've been able to do that?
Stop it
Right.
from spreading. It's as simple as correct doses of the right vitamin C for the individual to keep enough high antioxidant level in the blood to kill any cells that would be floating around trying to lodge somewhere else. And it's done in different forms, at least twice every 24 hours. And during the entire cancer treatment, you do not go 24 hours without a large dose, or you run the risk. Some of it is very simple, but it's just not done. We having fun yet? Any last questions? Because I think we're there on timing.
Epstein-Barr virus.
All those things, I love those.
I know it's a big one.
You know, and you said chronic fatigue and some other things before. All those are a piece of cake. I love that stuff. Lyme's disease. Critical Lyme's disease. Remember the pharmaceutical rep that I was talking about? They were diagnosed with Lyme's disease. They knew lots of doctors. They were doing all the treatments that they could do for, I really don't remember. I think it was something like 10 to 15 years or so. And we're getting worse and worse and worse. And we had them totally free, I think within, it's vague, so a year or two. I'm thinking maybe a year. On the outside, 2 years. Totally free. We're doing another lecture on Lyme's, which needs to be known because many things about Lyme's is not known. According to the medical community, in 2018, it's going to be the #1 infectious disease in the United States. And it is far more easily transmitted than what everybody believes, including the medical community. And there are, how would you say, the facts are there was a resistance in cooperation with the government, there's resistance in cooperation with the insurance companies, and lack of knowledge that's known or being told by the medical communities. So we're going to talk about that and who's studying it as far as the government, where it started, how it's spreading, and what you do about it.
Is it something we can register for?
Yeah, and it's free. Bottom line is, we have not had one single case of Lyme's to any degree that when they follow the protocol has not been completely resolved.
Can you get people off their diabetes medicine?
Can I legally say that? Yes.
You can say that, okay, I was just, okay.
Diabetes is far more treatable than people think, but if you do everything the medical community says, you'll never get rid of your diabetes. I also find that people with diabetes Mental emotional aspects for health. There's common things that go with this, and this is taught in TKM. They have a tendency to be self-critical and self-sabotagers. So the more self-sabotaging habits you have, it makes it a little more difficult to help. Why? Because you won't follow what needs to be done. If you follow what needs to be done, it makes it much more rapid, quick, and done. Over.
When is the next TKM training?
I think it's November, but it's a level 3 and 4, which has a prerequisite of 1 and 2. So if anybody's interested in a 3 and 4, you could get the 1 and 2 DVD sets and go through that, and then you'd qualify for the 3 and 4. I will teach 1 or 2 of those a year. That's the opportunity. If you go to those, great. If you don't, wait till next year. Society has changed, has it not? So I'm not going to wrestle against it. Let people make their choices. But I'm not going to stress myself out.
Good for you.
I'm telling you, it's a lot better life, a lot more joy, happy, peace. I love it.
Good.
Yeah. So, God bless you. Thank you for coming. If you have any final questions, we'll address that. But for those online, we'll see you. Don't forget, October 21st is a free lecture for Lyme's, and we have that level 3 and 4 coming up. God bless you. Bye-bye.